Well, today's episode was inspired by you this morning.
Yes.
And you said that you wanted to really, you're just saying, we just finished a retreat and
well, first of all, I wanted this background.
days.
I was like, this is crazy. I've had to look at this for like 10 days and it's been amazing. And then, the deep work that we just did in the retreat, there were some conversations that I thought, we need to share this with the public because there's a lot of value in discovering like what is pleasure exactly, how do we have more of it, what happens when we have resistance or aversion to it, and what does it mean when we say follow your pleasure, because it's not that obvious for some of us.
So follow the pleasure brick road?
Yes. That's funny. So let's jump in. What do we mean by pleasure, first of all? Because that was a really deep discussion.
Well, let me hear what you think.
Okay. Well, part of the discussion that we had is pleasure isn't just an orgasm. It's yes to life itself. It's the capacity to feel delight in our life in all kinds of ordinary moments, not just in bed. Although, on this podcast, we love to talk about the stuff in bed. However, I really feel that how we do life in respect to, are we predominantly avoiding pain and kind of moving away from that and always like making that our thing, or are we actually, do we know what delights us? Do we know what inspires us? Do we know what's possible? And are we willing to lean in that direction? And most of the time, the answer is no. And yet the human system, so we had a lot of guest speakers, some amazing doctors came on and talked a lot about our physiology, what's going on with pleasure, what's going on with our bodies. And it's obvious that well-being and actually almost miraculous healings at times happen when a human being aligns themselves with their body, works with their body, speaks out loud words of encouragement to the body. I thought that was remarkable. And this ties into sex because we make pleasure sounds, we tell each other what we love, we celebrate what's going on. And so it creates more and more vitality, more and more inspiration, and I think sexiness.
Matt say all y'all are lucky listening in because typically after a retreat, you just want to like down days, not to...
Yeah, I'm tired. Work. I can hear it in my voice.
But you were inspired.
I was inspired. I was like, let's do it.
And it gives you pleasure to go ahead and do this. And
we fly in a few hours and I'm like, let's just get up early and do this. Have a conversation with you. We really love you. You're our community. We love that you're growing. If you're new here, please feel welcome. The adventure that we're going to have in this episode, I think, is actually crucial. We talked a little bit about this in the erotic ecosystem episode. However, I think the specificity of this one is, well, what is pleasure and how do we follow it and why would we want to do that?
Well, maybe we can talk a little bit why it is that we have so much resistance towards, or even not even just a resistance, but it just doesn't make sense, or it can feel rather disruptive just to even the thought of following one's pleasure.
Yes, so when we discuss this in a group setting, I love group settings because you get all kinds of feedback. It became obvious that we are socially conditioned to have a little bit of aversion or even some disdain for pleasure. We are predominantly a working culture in the world. Like we need to achieve things and get things done and cross off our to-do list. And pleasure is this side reward or this thing you do sometimes on a holiday or sometimes if you have a spare minute at the end of the day before you crash. And what I started to understand of the social conditioning is also for women, there's two things to pleasure. There's one side to it where we're told, this is your prowess in this domain is desirable. It's the thing that's going to make you wanted and find a partner. However, as soon as a woman genuinely connects with her pleasure, with her desire, then she's often slut-shamed and put down. So it's a very difficult thing for the psyche to go, well, I was told all my life that this is the thing that I'm supposed to be good at and I should go for and I'm going to be well rewarded. And then the moment it's discovered, there's shaming, which is very confusing.
Also, even for men as well, this kind of concept of no pain, no gain, that you work hard throughout the week and then you get rewarded on the weekend, or you work hard for many months and then you get the couple vacations, maybe one, maybe two vacations if you're even living a life of luxury in some sense. And there's this idea as well that when we then save it for, the end of the week, or maybe at the end of the nighttime, that you sort of binge on it, and then it's something that doesn't really lead you towards the best decisions, or it's not even really sustainable.
Yes.
You go off and you do a party, that kind of thing. And so we never really get to have a healthy relationship to pleasure in a way that integrates into our life, in a way that actually is sustainable, makes us more whole and unto ourselves. Now, when it comes to specifically the whole pleasure then in the bedroom, there's also this added layer a lot of times around either a guilt or a shame that can be with it, as opposed to really being able to trust it as a compass. In fact, so many people are afraid that if they were to trust it or allow it to take over, it would just literally possess them, and then lead them astray from being able to accomplish anything else in life.
Years ago, I did a little mini documentary on my work. And one of the statements that I made in that is, we had this global weird idea that if a woman truly found her pleasure and lived by it, that the world would fall apart, that she would leave her kids and her family and her this and her that. And on some rare occasions, maybe that does happen. But what I have found is when women who happen to have families discover their pleasure, it actually has a positive ripple effect in the family. People are happier, they're more at ease with their own bodies, they're more curious, they trust more, they ask questions. Like, we had one mother in the program saying, my son was just disgusted by everything I was doing, he thought it was horrible. But then when she came into alignment with her own pleasure, he's like, Mom, actually, could I interview you for this project that I have at school, talking about your first time? And it was very edgy, and she was like, what is this huge flip? So this happens when we start to integrate. And the pursuit of pleasure, if that word is difficult for you, start with ease, start with joy, start with another word that is a feeling of yes in your body. That's essentially the landscape of pleasure, is the yes to life. And the landscape of pain is the no. And a lot of times the other resistance is that there has been either sexual abuse, physical abuse, even injury through a medical procedure that causes the body to be contracted, to be in pain. And then it's like, how in the world is this thing that I'm hearing that everyone else is having pleasure in so painful for me? I must be broken. And so there's also resistance to explore, and almost a feeling of, I don't want to touch because touching hurts.
It sounds rather obvious, but the first step to pleasure is being able to feel yourself.
Yes.
However,
how do you do that? In a world that has an epidemic of numbness. We really do. We're forcing our bodies to sit for how many hours? We're forcing ourselves to ingest news that is rather shocking and horrific, and we've just become numb to it.
Well, people don't understand that numbness is simply the body's way of being able to protect it from, the levels of pain that one is having to tolerate. Or even, we often think of sometimes as like pain is this external force, but a lot of times we put it on ourselves. If we're having to just endure to be able to get through a work day or get through life,
or get through a moment of sex.
Exactly. We then will, as opposed to then holding the bracing, the body actually does something quite intelligent. It goes, okay, well, you need to get through this. We need to be able to endure this. All right, well, we're going to shut off the sensory system, so that way then you can just be focused on doing or completing the task at hand.
Yes.
However, when that's done over time, then we gain less access to the pleasure that we have.
Exactly.
Because we also then don't release the pain that's stored inside ourselves. And on top of that, as that library of pain begins to build, it's like, oh, I'm not even going to go into pleasure because I'm going to have to dig into the pain and let that out first. And so then we'll typically try and go for some very like short-term pleasure, something that's a little bit more instant.
Like a piece of chocolate?
Something that will give us a very quick reward, where we then we can get the reward before we actually begin to release the pain.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that frustrates a lot of people when they go on vacation. You know, the body has basically entered into allostasis, meaning that it's compensating for, it's calculating for the future.
Yeah.
And so then you go on vacation, what happens?
You get sick.
The body's like, oh, finally, okay, we can deal with, what we've been containing, and then we go ahead and get sick. In the same way, if we really go into a place of relaxed arousal, longer lovemaking, and it's not always just a physical pain that's being suppressed, it's also a emotional pain typically. So there can be emotions that come up, there can be sensations that come up, and this is why then we typically will just want sex to get over with.
So that's the resistance side.
Okay. So the question is like, okay, well, how do we then start to wake up?
Definitely in the erotic portion, we'll get super detailed about that, but I think we can talk a little bit here. So you said something important earlier, and you said that the first step to accessing pleasure is to feel. And I know, like with your YAFAT program for men, you're saying having more pleasure and lasting longer by feeling more. And in the Awaken the Sensual Woman, it's the same. What we're going for is
awakening the senses, the sensual.
Yeah, and awakening the tissues, and awakening our connection with ourselves, awakening our desire. So all of those aspects. So feeling more, simple ways, like a simple way to start to feel more is literally just paying attention to your breath and noticing that the breath is happening, noticing that the rib cage stretches, that maybe your belly moves a little bit. If you're very attentive, you'll also notice that the pelvic floor is responding just to breathing. Just that alone, the ability to scan your body, be aware of the breathing process and feeling where the breath is going already gives you way more somatic awareness. So you're going to feel more just from tracking your breath.
Well, I want to go towards the piece on just being able to identify one's truth, meaning what is it that you actually want as opposed to what it is that you don't want.
Okay.
We're very quick to be able to state, I don't like that, that doesn't feel good. And then
we're good with the no.
We're good with the no, though we're not always good at
saying
really
no,
expressing.
but we're good at.
We kind of know what we don't want.
Yeah.
We don't.
Although I have to say, most women, they can tell you a big list of what they don't want. They're very clear. But when you ask them what they actually want, then they're kind of like,
However, a lot of times that list can stay rather internal.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like the physicality that happens when we are encountering something that is painful, or if we've trained ourselves to numb out to something, we typically have a very held bracing pattern, meaning that like our body goes into one position and it sort of stays there.
Yes.
And that might be kind of familiar what you notice with the sexual experience.
Yes, and this is the exciting part of, I feel, Section Sex, your work, is this concept of the adaptive giver and active receiver, really actively receiving. So I think this, even outside of a sexual context, is really important. Can you actively receive a compliment and just receive it and be thankful? That's not always easy. Can you actively receive support when it's offered to you and say, oh wow, actually, it would be really great to have some support right now. That's outside of the bedroom, but it's also can happen in the bedroom where you are being adored or admired, where you're being touched, where there's no agenda to the touch. It's just, I just want you to receive, I want to give to you and see what happens. So that ability to actively take in the yes is an exercise.
Well, I want to get to even something more basic, because there are all these body mechanics that, yes, to be able to use your pelvic floor, to be able to swing your hips and everything else, but just the ability to signal what is your yes, what actually feels good in a way that, one, lets you feel it, two, lets a partner be able to go, oh, this is going in the right direction. Because when we are used to bracing, or we're expecting that things are going to start to hurt, or that they're just going to end soon, or just not lead us to where we want them to go, we will then go into this bracing pattern, which then gives no communication to the other person. It also helps you get away from truly feeling pain, because you're like, oh, well, this has always gone in a negative way. But it doesn't actually start to generate then the body's freedom to really feel pleasure. And it can feel a bit risky at first if you're like, oh, I don't know, because I've always had this experience that it's going to go this way. Or some people even go, well, I should actually suppress my pleasure even if I do get in touch with it, because then my partner is going to finish too quickly, judge me, or whatever it might end up being.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who withhold it to punish their partner too. So there's all kinds of reasons why we withhold. However, we're here to encourage you to no longer withhold and to start really, again, what is yes feel like?
And so to get to that, a lot of times we need to know that our no is going to be respected. We need to be able to start to communicate the thing, or show the thing that we don't want, and to be able to not just have the list that then gets stored in the mind, and then we just kind of go, oh, this is the history of how it's always going to be, it's never going to change. And so then you kind of keep this list until things finally explode, and your partner's like, whoa, what's going on here? Or finally your body's like, you know what, I'm done with sex, I have no desire, I have low libido now, and the whole system literally begins to shut down. So that freedom to actually pause your partner, or to go, no, I don't want this, is a very important first step. And for that, the person often needs to give themselves permission. It's almost, so we're doing different sessions here that was working just specifically on
Embodied consent.
Which is then when we talk about the importance of truth, that first truth is literally your body being able to express that yes as well as the no. And there was a constant pattern that was sort of emerging, which was a freedom to express the no. Then the person was able to get out of the bracing pattern, and it had to almost be physically conditioned in the same way that when you go to a self-defense class, the ability to yell no, or to push someone away, or just to be able to stop what's going on. Instead of freezing, it has to be physically conditioned. And so there's lots of, no, or just speaking the no, or but I mean, this specifically this motion here, and it people continually talk about, well, since we were kids, that gets overridden. Yeah, because you don't want to hug or kiss a family member or whoever it is, and you're being told that you have to, and And then, of course, that translates to them with your partner. It's like, oh, I don't want to reject them. I don't want to have them get shut down, or I don't want them to be angry. Precisely. Yeah. But once that no started to come out, then there could be the curiosity to establish, oh, well, what is that yes? And now we're talking about, sometimes it could be, 20, 30, 40 or more years of not being able to say that no. So the thought of even what a yes would be is so foreign. But the beauty is that quickly, as that no was able to be expressed, then there was an ability to really lean in, and it happens quite quickly to then go, okay, well, what would be the yes? The other beautiful thing that I find if you're wanting to explore embodied consent, this is definitely something available on the Embodied Love University. But when I've witnessed people explore this, all bodies, it's so lovely because there's this settling of, now that I know I can say no and I can advocate for it and I can take a stand for it, I'm way more interested
in my yes. I'm way more delighted that there is an infinite amount of yes that I can explore. And the final thing I want to say in this kind of portion is when there's sexual engagement, a no often ends things. So if there's a sudden pain or just something's not working or a weird look and it completely like crashes the experience. And so that's why people, as you say, go into numbness and just override that and they don't attend to it. So it's either crashing or it's creating even more numbness. But what I have found in my own body is the moment there is a no, I know it's an invitation. Well, where's the yes? And so I don't stop moving. I start to then shift my position, shift how I'm moving my hips, shift my breath, discover like, where is the pleasure? So that's the part about following the yes. So just the no is there, I could contract into it and stop. But there's so much more available if I continue to explore movement, breath, texture, and permission.
I'd like to add, before we switch over, that it is also a dialogue. It is an interaction. So many people are afraid then, when they do encounter their yes, that then it's
a permanent yes.
It's a permanent yes.
And it means yes to everything, which it doesn't.
And the partner's like, but you said yes. Yeah. You also, you said that you like this. So then you kind of want to do it prescriptively, as if it almost becomes the next routine. And so that then can also create a hesitancy around really going into that yes.
And where the discussion globally, I mean, consent is a big discussion right now with all the stuff that's happened and is continuing to happen. And so where we need to understand is consent is an emergent experience.
Yes.
It's not, we get somewhere and it's statically stays there. It's a constant dialogue. What if like you eat out, you go to a beautiful meal, they bring all these different things and you're really loving it, but then there's this one thing you're like, I don't really like the taste of that. Do you get up and you're disgusted and leave the meal, or you just go, I'm not going to eat that part, but I'm going to focus on here? It's an emergent thing. You just don't know like at times what to do. So you think, okay, it's static. I got a yes, it's a permanent yes. Or I got a no, it's a permanent no. My partner's a permanent no. Well, what if you took some time to discover, well, if it's a no in this arena, and it's always a no in this arena, there's this whole other landscape over here that's undiscovered that could be yes. And we don't explore that.
There's also this kind of, I just can't ever escape the feeling that when you hear consent, it's as if someone's making this proposition to you and you're going, okay, I accept your terms. Versus, a dynamic desire.
Yes.
Where we are actively creating
in the moment
the thing that we want, and I'd even say that we're pursuing it ourselves in a way that, or not even pursuing it, we're just in it.
We're in it, and we're attending to it.
And then we're co-creating that together with whomever is in that shared experience, and then from there, it can take you in places that you just never would have conceived of. And then it's like when you're going hiking and there's no trail, you're just in the woods and you're in the moment, you're following, you're going through the trees and everything is just drawing you towards you where you want to go. And so as opposed to just having, let's say, a trail, it's like it's a compass. The compass doesn't exactly show you, well, what is the path, but it gives you that general direction. So that way, wherever you go, you know that you're going to end up in a place that you're wanting to be.
Yeah, and the cool thing is when you practice following your yes, following your pleasure, then the end of the trail isn't necessarily the thing that is the most exciting. You could have many adventures all along the way, lots of different delights all along the way, so it makes the entire experience just really fulfilling. And if there isn't a waterfall at the end, you don't care because you've had a really beautiful experience. And if there is a waterfall at the end, you just like strip off and dive in.
I feel we'd be doing a tremendous disservice, though, to those on the free part of this podcast if we didn't connect what is a truly powerful methodology here to a system to really that crosses not just the bedroom, but then goes out into life and vice versa. So he said it's so important to be able to feel. So that way then you can awaken numbness and actually find pleasure. So when it comes to your yes and no, it's not something that you think about in terms of you sit still and you go, do I want that? Do I not want that?
Especially with the maybe.
That will bring you typically towards what should you do versus what do you feel. So how do you start to feel your yes? How do you start to feel your no? And then give it the freedom to be expressed so that way that feeling doesn't lead you towards a freeze.
Correct.
And then if you're in a maybe, as opposed to just sort of waiting or trying to think your way through it, the pause is alive. The pause is alive in the sense that you breathe, in the sense that you actually try out a little bit of the yes, try out a little bit of the no, see which one feels best. And when you know that it's not a contract and you have a partner that is also willing to listen in and start to get tuned, which by the way, that starts to happen by being more expressive, then you develop a language that you realize, you know what, this is actually quite instinctual. This is something that's always been inside me, this ability. And as that starts to emerge, then the experience of pleasure and the experience of mutual pleasure starts to emerge as well.
Beautiful. Well, if you want to learn more about embodied consent, it is one of the foundational pieces to embodied love, and you can find that in the university, embodiedlove.com. University, right? Embodiedloveuniversity.com. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, so come to that. It's a free membership, and we have a whole range of amazing foundational trainings that are completely free, and embodied consent is part of that foundational training.
And if you want to dive deeper into it, there's an entire course on it as well.
Exactly.
Set up as fun games.
Yes. And if you want to just hear the explicit side, because here in the explicit side, we go into the how. We also do an erotic audio that demonstrates whatever the topic it is. And then embodieddlove.love is where you can go to update your
So in the explicit side, are we going to talk a little bit about some of just the general things that we learned during the sessions and how people can start to dive? All right. Well, don't want to miss that. Let's go.
So in storytelling, because I think modeling through story is really important. I will just start with my own body, and then I'd love you to bring in some client stories. But with my own body, as we know from a few episodes ago, I was having some challenges with my pelvic floor. It's healed up now. However, there's like this shadow memory of tension. And what I've been finding is I'm like more and more capable and able and willing to like show up and express myself the whole spectrum of my pleasure, because it kind of got diminished with that tension and pain. However, one of the things that I got to practice during the time of challenge is, ooh, that's really a no. Like that does not feel good, but where is my yes? And I remember you saying to me, like, I'm amazed that you still want to connect with me despite all of these like discomforts that you're having. And it was because the yes of our connection, the yes of expressing our sexuality together nourishes a very, very deep part of me. So I had the opportunity to, okay, well, what could a yes be even in these conditions? That's what I want to share.
Well, tell a little bit more about that. How did you end up getting to that?
Just again, as we said in the first half of the podcast, it was just simply like, if I was a no, not just sitting there and going more into the no and the contraction, I would literally either pause you, or I would shift my body, or change my breath or how I was moving in order to explore, well, where could the yes be? And I think that's what you were saying just before we switched over. This is something that must be physically trained. You need to practice, well, what does yes feel like over here? What does yes feel over here? What is a no? And practice over and over again, and then start to trust that it's okay. As an active receiver, it's really important to understand you're never stuck. You don't have to stay in pain or in the no or in whatever's happening. You're not stuck. You can shift, you can breathe, you can move, you can pause, you can ask for something different with your voice, you can ask for something different with your body. I feel an active receiver is a person who has complete freedom and in some ways, quote unquote, control of their own experience, because there's never a moment where you aren't at choice.
I mean, one of the things that was coming up was even this fear around losing control, even if it was a state of pleasure.
That is a common fear.
So the ability then to actually guide oneself into it and to know that you could also take yourself out of it, then gave a lot more permission as well as confidence to be able to go into letting go,
yes.
which is kind of an interesting paradox in a certain way.
Yes.
Now,
but we're actually designed to lose control. There's literally a part of your brain through the act of the whole cycle of arousal and expression that will kick in and literally have a person lose control. So a lot of us now, though, with like hunkering down on our no, have actually inhibited that natural response. But there is a natural response, and that's because when we let go, there's a lot of information that's unavailable to us when we're kind of controlling and boxing our life into a very specific experience. So when we release and we soften and we allow, a lot more information and creativity and insights and healing suddenly is available to us.
I would say that is even something as simple as just kids and how they can play.
Yes.
There's like a playfulness that comes in, you just go into the moment and you let go to it, and it kind of has its own emergent inertial effect with whatever you're playing with, whomever you're playing with, and you get really absorbed into that moment. And that's where a lot of like creativity and joy start to come in.
Just want to clear my throat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna wave so you know. I love what you're saying about kids and their playfulness and their creativity, and we have that, and it's called erotic innocence, and we can have a reclamation of erotic innocence. In fact, erotic innocence, I've actually prescribed that as a homework to clients that are really locked in. They're having some difficulty. They can't seem, there's a mismatch with their partner. Moving into erotic innocence assisted them to let go of how things should look, how things should feel, etc., etc., and just to delight in that which was genuinely emerging and celebrate in that. And I think that's a huge, huge gift.
Now, there's this big thing, because we've mentioned the importance of being able to speak or express and to feel one's truth. Now, this idea that, well, truth is just subjective, and it's just different for everybody, which sounds freeing in one sense, but it's not if all you've ever have encountered is how to be expressive or to brace through and into your no. And then if you're in a state of numbness, then you're kind of locked down.
Yeah.
So a piece that was continually like a starting point is, well, what would be your body's yes? In the same way that if you slump your shoulders forward, walk around with your head down, there's going to be a psychological effect to that body posture.
Absolutely.
And that is not subjective.
And a physiological one.
Yes. And that's not something that's just subjective. It's been shown time and time again across cultures that this is what happens. The same way too, if you take a certain breathing pattern, or if you turn your feet in, if you're doing particular movements, it wears on your joints.
Crossing your arms, crossing the legs.
There's a certain way that the body is actually designed to move in a way that creates positive effect. There are ways that you can train your body that are going to injure you, and there are ways to train your body that are going to give you more health, more power, more muscle, more energy, etc. So we would start off literally in the sessions going through, okay, well, let's get these different parts of you moving in a way that actually is expressive and then also ties into, I mean, this is the beauty of the design of the body, because the way that our body goes into a place of yes is also the way that then naturally creates a movement for sex. And it's just, when you start to look at that as a system, you go, oh my gosh, this is actually an incredible design.
Intelligence,
and intelligence that we have here. So we would start off with getting just the breathing mechanism going. Like, how do we breathe? Because most of us are breathing in a way that is either very shallow, which is what you do then when you brace, or when you freeze, you can hold your breath. And that's also a lot of ways that we'll try and create and force pleasure, is by holding our breath, also squeezing our pelvic floor, tightening everything. And if you were to do that for, let's say, running, you wouldn't be able to run very far. You wouldn't be able to exercise very much. So getting that breathing mechanism with what we call the inhale push gets, the hips to start to open and rock. It gets the movement of the spine. It gets that pelvic floor to expand.
So many of us hold our bellies in for that flat tummy. And the more you do that, the more you don't have I would say almost the mental conditioning to allow the belly to come out.
Well, and then also too, when you are just seated like this, it's very easy to roll your lower back, which then, how are you going to breathe into your stomach? You're essentially like in
So if you're listening to this right now, see if you can, if you're seated, sit up a little straighter and then open up your legs a little bit.
And let your butt go backwards.
Kind of like,
so you have a nice...
Hey, check out what's going on back there.
And then when you take a breath all the way down into your belly, notice how there's this space that happens there. And if you're very attentive, you'll notice that just taking that breath causes a gentle rock of your hips forwards, your butt back, and then you exhale, brings you back to neutral.
And it actually opens things.
And then that's the next piece, is that from a receiver side, it doesn't matter if you are
where you're receiving.
On the receiving side of penetration, whether you are a man or a woman, whether you're, homosexual, heterosexual, whatever you identify as, this goes beyond identity. We're talking about basic body mechanics that everybody has. So is that when you do this breath, then that's going to open your orifices, which then allows you to actively bring someone in. And then that same motion can also have you actively bring someone out. And that is real power. There is a tremendous amount of power that happens in that.
So in the week that I was just facilitating, it's for professionals who are learning how to teach my method. And one of the things that's really important is, if professionals are going to speak about sexuality, help people with intimacy, help them with sex and pleasure and all of that, they themselves need to feel it. And so one of the foundational practices for that is the jade egg practice, whether or not an egg is used. And initially, for a woman to learn that her vagina is not just this sleepy, passive hole, that it's actually a very alive being that is responsive to what you're thinking, it's responsive to how you're breathing, it's responsive to how you're moving. And when a woman discovers that, even the ones who are having vaginismus or difficulty receiving anything coming in, start to learn to trust that sensation, start to be able to move in a way where the body isn't reacting with tension and pain.
Sex, like the average jade egg practice, will typically start off in the wrong place, which is just pushing something in. If you are doing a jade egg practice where you are just taught to just push the egg in, and then it's all about everything you do once it's in, well, first of all, leave that, and then more importantly, come join Dr. Saida's class. Well, this is so key though, because if you're having issues around stating your boundaries, feeling and then coming into true and deeper desire. If your body's not being listened to, and then your practice is just reinforcing that by just pushing something in, you're essentially recreating the exact issue that you're trying to solve.
Correct.
And this is no different for those that have vaginismus and then go to a doctor that then pushes in a dilator and then pries you open, because then again, you're also overriding your body's mechanism to, one, be listened to, but two, to actively start to open.
I want to address something that's a little edgy, and it's something I've seen a lot in myself and many, many, many clients, is when we are in a no, in a strong no, something's bothering us. We're angry, we're sad, we're dealing with whatever. And the body's like, then there's this resistance to move toward a pleasure practice, to move toward touching ourselves, to move toward even relieving any of that. It's like I'm attached to feeling crappy, and so how do we break out of that? And we don't break out of that by suddenly feeling amazing and being a million different fantasies and desires and you're completely switched on. That's usually not how we move out of that. How we move out of that
in itself, it is this sort of unrealistic dream and fantasy that, the miracle partner is going to appear, all of the clouds are going to clear, and then we're going to go into a place of paradise, or the stars aligned, and in that one moment, now everything feels great. And that can happen maybe in that moment. It can happen for a quick thing with the partner at the beginning, but then quickly when life comes around, how do we actually sustain that?
Yeah, so
anyways, you were saying
I lost my thought here. What was I saying? So if we have resistance to touching ourselves, we have resistance to pleasure, or we have resistance to our partner, we don't want these things, we're like, we're in our hard times, then the path to actually discovering, okay, so that's my no, where is the yes, is to actually come to your body. It's not avoiding the body, it's to come to the body. So you might need to go and do some crazy dancing, or just shake it off, or just go for a big vigorous hike, or some kind of movement will be really important so that you can kind of break free a little bit of the hold that emotion has on you, or that situation has on you. And then when it comes to like self-touch, it's really important to understand that you don't always have to be in a good mood to do your practice. The actual act of showing up for yourself, this is intimacy. And now you're training yourself for real life situations. So if I think that I can only ever show up for my body when everything is perfect and I feel perfect and I'm this, then I'm training myself that that's how it has to be in relationship. And so why I'm such an advocate, like, okay, I know you don't feel like it, do it anyways. Lie down, hold your heart, put your hand over your genitals, take a breath. I know you don't want to do it anyways. Just say to yourself, look, I don't want to do it, I'm going to do it anyways. There's this thing that the moment you can actually act, you move toward, even if you don't know quite how you're going to get there, you move toward it, it already starts to shift the energetic pattern. That's really important. Now I've had with myself moments where I'm so angry, and I've given this as an assignment to clients, where I'm like, okay, I'm so angry, and then the thought would come in like, well, then put your finger in your vagina. I'm like, that's crazy. I'm angry. I'm not putting my finger in my vagina right now. This is inappropriate. Where is that thought coming from? This is totally stupid. And then I did it anyways, and I didn't want to do it. So how does that work with consent? I still sipped my finger in. Even I was like mentally not wanting, but actually when I touched my body, it felt nice. Then I sipped in, I didn't force anything. Then I held still, and I told my body, I'm not going to be doing anything. I'm just gonna put a finger in and hold still. And so my body then was okay with that. I would hold the point, I would hold still. I still had the anger, and I was still like, I wanna punch something. But as I was holding, something started to shift. And then the tears came, and then eventually the laughter. And then the energy changed. And I didn't even do anything else. I didn't even take myself to an orgasm or do anything else other than take a moment to lie down and bring a finger in and just connect with myself. The inside of the vagina, it's like our inner sanctuary. And when we are so disconnected, we need to come back. And coming back just through the mind isn't enough. So especially if you have so many layers of stuff going on, then you're gonna need to come back in the most simplistic way. And the most simplistic way is to actually touch and breathe. And I know it sounds crazy, but all of my clients who've been willing to take the risk to do that assignment had massive breakthroughs. And then you start to understand, oh, even my anger is impermanent. It doesn't have to like rule my world forever and ever. Or even my sadness isn't impermanent, because you start to see, which is true, emotions are chemical sentences, let's say. And if we don't fully feel them, then they loop, and they loop for a very, very long time. But again, back to what you said in the beginning, it's through feeling that we liberate ourselves. So I just wanted to say that piece. Mm-hmm. It's a little edgy because it's like, oh, well, where's the consent?
Well, let's go through that though,
yeah.
Because, and I would even say emotions are the stories and narratives that we have, mm-hmm. Or the fuel of those stories and narratives. And we typically think, well, this emotion leads to then this consequence, and so we don't want to go into it.
Yeah.
But that would mean then for the body, especially, that touch are the words. And if we are not willing to have an interaction with ourselves, then we're not going to be able to have the conversation that lets us get to the other side of what we're feeling. Mm-hmm. So where we're noticing is that so many people become resistant to the touch is one, because, well, I touch myself because it needs to lead to pleasure, it needs to be an orgasm, it needs to be something nice. And we'll even see this sometimes with, I'm not going to meet up with my friend because they're just there for the good time.
Yeah.
But when we really start to have a deep and true friendship, we can sit and have the conversation and go, hey, you know what? I'm really angry. I'm really sad. Whatever it is that the current status quo is inside oneself, to be able to express that, and even becomes more important if we're upset with that person, that then we have that interaction mm-hmm. and that conversation.
A really, really good friend, that means to yourself as well, will be able to sit with you in silence.
Well, and that's my next point, is that most of the times we will even treat our friends better or have higher expectations from our friends than we have to our own relationship to self. So if you're going to become friends with this body, as opposed to just quit, no,
yeah, behave appropriately, be aroused now and shush now, and
which is why then the body's like, you're not going to listen to me. I'm just going to go into numbness. You go ahead and put this in cruise control and and see where that ends up. And then we'll get
really sick soon, so that you stop.
So that is the ability then to go, okay, this touch that I'm doing here is just to find out what is there. Mm-hmm. That's going to help you get past I'm not bypassing what's on, and mm-hmm. the resistance towards then feeling
it's a touch
what
that
is there.
There's no agenda. It's the difference between a sexual doing experience and a sexual being experience.
Which can lead to a second resistance, yes. Which is, the feelings are starting to come up.
Yes.
I
don't want to have those sensations.
I heard a really beautiful reflection around, this touch practice and this listening to the body. It's much easier just to go ahead and pull out a vibrator and have the quick contractions
before the emotions come.
With the quick little release of pleasure before the actual emotions come in.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm going to enter into a dialogue with myself, not force an orgasm,
yes.
Feel what's going on, and then, as you said, release the negative emotions or move through them and transform them.
I want to go back to intimacy, because I think we're afraid of it. And and we're afraid of it in ourselves. We're afraid of it together. And the fear is that, exactly as you described, that there's a big monster. Like if we pause and we feel we're going to meet this monster, and it's going to be an unbearable monster. But the truth is, how many times have we had really tough moments together, and we turn and we face them, and we breathe through them, and we say the truth? It brings us closer, and then we get more horny, and then we're more celebratory and more free versus less free. And it's the same inwardly. There are some spaces in some of us that we genuinely feel are horrific, and we feel like if I turn my attention there, I'm going to die or pass into some other realm. It's just not true. The more we can turn toward those things that we're afraid of and just be with them. You don't have an agenda, you're not forcing an outcome, you're not even trying to change either the physical sensation or the emotional sensation or even the thought. You're just practicing, like, can I breathe right here on this edge? Right here I'm going to breathe, I'm going to stay. Why am I going to stay? Because I want to explore my yes to life. I want to know that there's more to life than just all this ick. I want to discover the yum. And that's the beauty of doing a practice like this, because then what happens is you entrain yourself and you realize every single time I actually respect myself, I take the time to know myself, I'm in a better place. There's more energy available, there's more creativity available. I actually heal whatever the thing is that's an imbalance. And yes, some healing can take months or even years. It doesn't matter, it's a journey. And if you can partake in that journey instead of resist that journey, you actually facilitate the experience to bloom in a way where you're going to gain a lot of wisdom and a lot of freedom.
I feel there's so much here that we're speaking about, and I really hope that it's connecting with you all, because I know that when talking about this, it can be very difficult to go, well, what does that actually mean? What does that, how does one actually do that? I mean, even before these sessions, we would have people go like, okay, well, what is it going to be? And
they imagine a million things, and it's never that.
I mean, there's a tendency to catastrophize. There's a tendency to also go like, oh, well, what might I actually truly want? Where am I going to hold
What's
on
going to
my own
happen
breath?
if I actually go for what I want? Is that going to be okay for myself and the rest of the world?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I really encourage you to lean in, come to discover these things in the community inside of ELU.
It takes flexing. It's a practice. So it's like a sex gym in a way. You know, it's an intimacy gym where you're needing to flex certain areas maybe that you've avoided, that have atrophied. We need to activate those and flex those. And then there's others that you overuse. We need to give those a little stretch and a break and just even things out a little bit. And that does take not only consistent practice, it actually takes community, because without community, the rest of the world really doesn't care about this stuff right now. It's lost in its thing. However, when every human being has a reclamation of their attention, can feel more at ease in their own body, and starts to understand, I am always one choice away, which is one breath away from improving whatever it is that I'm in, whatever it might be. That's sovereignty, that's autonomy, that's what we want for human beings. And so the way into all of this, the most simple way, again, is your breath. If something's really hard, you might notice that your throat closes, your chest constricts, your stomach tightens, you have a knot in your solar plexus.
And you feel stuck.
And your fists might even tighten and close. You might be clenching your toes or your thighs or your lower back, wherever it shows up. So when you notice any of those signs, being able to open your hands, physically stretch your belly, open your chest, open your throat, take a breath.
With the breath, though.
Exactly.
Get that first breath. If there's one thing you can just go, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a deep breath. And I'm going to let that breath lower into my body, go into my belly, go all the way into my pelvic floor. Then you can start to unlock. I mean, by the way, too, when you take the breath, guess what happens? you start to feel more because you have oxygen being delivered throughout the body. And then if you add movement to that, then blood flows even better, which delivers more oxygen to all the parts of the body that are locked up. And then you can start to go towards what you want.
And if, taking a really deep breath is impossible right now, then just take a slightly bigger breath than what you're doing right now. So if your breath is super shallow, just a little less shallow, but it doesn't have to be a full thing right away. It can be incremental, and actually titrating is actually important. It's a big part of this work. We're not here to sensationalize anything. We're here to, in a very practical way, in the way that works in harmony with your natural body, the harmony that wants to exist in your being. It's there, you're just tapping into it. And so using pleasure, following your pleasure, discovering the yes to life, being willing to explore what that is a lifelong journey. You're not going to sort it out in one session. I'm going to listen to this podcast, I'm going to have it all sorted. It's not that way, because you are an emergent person. Your being is always learning, always growing. What is yes today might become a no tomorrow. What is a no today becomes a yes. These things are really bizarre. I don't understand the logic always behind it. However, I do trust that my body knows, and through following the natural intelligence of my body, I've kept myself making really excellent choices. I don't live a life of regrets. I'm able to build a trust where I'm like, oh, if things are really hard, I'm not going to abandon myself. If things are really hard, I have the tenacity to bring my truth to a meaningful relation in my life. And these are life skills.
So here you're talking now kind of on the macro, because as we said that truth isn't just this contract of how it must be always, in the bedroom or even with your partner, but also in life as well.
Yes.
That truth begins to evolve. It's like, yes, that was true for that phase of my life. And then as the body changes and matures and the world changes around us and social conditions change, then we can start to follow it. And it's a really beautiful thing, because then there's always more to discover. There's always more to experience. There's ways that we can continue to lean in and become more curious. And even though we understand then, okay, well, this is the general system of, we can't take a breath if our body's shut down and closed and fully tense, we start to realize, there's times where it actually is important to be able to close and shut down and brace against what is there in the present moment. But then when it's not there, we then need to be able to then open towards the thing that we want.
Do you remember when we worked with Barbara? And she was talking about sustainable physiology.
Yes.
I want to bring that in as we close the conversation.
By the way, Barbara Collier, amazing trauma therapist, works with horses.
Equanimity. Tucson, Arizona.
Look her up.
She's incredible, but she actually flies around the world to do stuff, so she's everywhere. She's amazing. So sustainable physiology has a rhythm. It's not like a static line of I am perfect, I am perfect, I am perfect. There is a rhythm. You do get aroused. You can have feelings and emotions, but it doesn't go over to the point where you want to fight and kill something. So you feel it, you understand I need to handle whatever this is. This is a big energy, this is a big emotion. Or the other side, which I wanted to address, because we were talking a lot about tightening and closing, but there are states like in fawning or like these things where someone gets kind of floppy and just like doesn't have any tension. And so that's also a part of coming back to your body, is you need to animate it. Whatever the case, animation is important, movement is important. So I wanted to say that piece, because as we are learning, sex is just a natural expression of who you are, and who you are is always emerging, and learning to be successful in your own sexual, intimate life with yourself, and then of course with a partner, is going to give you a lot of joy, freedom, and bliss in life. And then if you practice this as a sexual practice daily, well, what is my yes? And discovering, the edges of where no is, you will also be able to do that in daily life. And then therefore, when something's mysterious, when you don't have control, you'll be able to feel your way through that experience and actually feel secure and feel confident that you can handle any situation.
So if you're inspired and you've listened to this and you've even gone and you've checked out the foundational videos, you've maybe even looked at the embodied consent course, and you're still curious to know, well, how does this work in real life? We do work with people in person. We have workshops, because it's just one of those things that sometimes you just need someone to help give you a guide.
I love an in-person trainer.
Yes, precisely.
That's the best.
Because once you feel this in your body, you will be changed. You'll literally go, I get this. It's like riding a bicycle. It's like this time you've learned the dance steps. You go, how did I not know this? It'll take even more effort to try and not do it once you've encountered it. Yes. And that is the beauty of the truth, of understanding how the body functions mechanically, and I don't mean like mechanics like a robot. Yeah. I mean just what are the proper
biomechanics.
The biomechanics of the body, of what that yes is, and then understanding how we begin to, with intimacy, impress upon ourselves and our partner constructive communication from the body, so that way we then start to have that interaction and dialogue that leads us into deeper states of pleasure, where our truth then triggers responsibility in ourselves and from our partner, which builds the needed trust to be able to go deeper into celebration. And that literally either patterns or repatterns the way that we then go into attachment, the way that we bond, the relationships that we have. And it's just been incredible seeing people who've maybe had a history of abusive relationship, or even abuse that is pre-verbal, start to then feel that activated inside themselves and find either a whole new way of being, or they start to then reclaim the relationships that they truly want. And that relationship often starts with themselves, and then is supported with another person, and lives within a community. And literally you have this whole ecosystem that is supportive of heading towards the things you want, as opposed to running away from the things that you don't.
Exactly. So inviting you to check out where we are in the world. If you're on the Embodied Love University, then we're always posting new events. We also have the Love Lab, which is going to be really fun. It's an interaction where we'll be there with you. We'll give you a partnered exercise, a solo exercise. You'll practice that for a few weeks. We jump on a live call. We discuss what happened. And growing like this as community just removes any shame, any guilt, starts to actually mature us into living healthy sexual adults.
I know that we need to wrap up because we have to get ready to travel.
Yeah.
But I feel that this is such an important conversation that I'm wondering if we just give this episode here towards the listeners. Now, you won't have the erotic insert where then you get to hear it in live action, but what do you think about that? We don't have to do it. We can have a conversation about it later.
Oh, we can discuss it later.
We can discuss it, and I guess you'll know if you know.
Yes.
So if you've heard this,
if you heard the whole thing,
and you haven't heard the insert where them putting it into practice, you'll know that you've been given the whole thing.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the free part, and you're also a member, and you've heard without the erotic insert, then you know that you just simply need to go to the members side of this. But this is such just a foundational and important conversation, because this does put us in touch with our truth, and the truth does set you free, and it sets your partner free. And that freedom is to actually find and follow your pleasure. To join us for the complete and explicit version of the podcast, simply upgrade your membership and gain instant access.